Good morning, everybody. You can tell Princess is super excited. She's upside down dog on the couch. Welcome to the Coffee Table Talks. Today we're going to have Brad Gorka, GRC, with us today. Brad, wave.
Morning.
There we go. If you're new here, my name is Rachel Arnold. I'm the Human API with SecureNation. To my upper left, that's Will McCullen. He's the program manager for the IT Center for Excellence at PIMA Community College in Tucson, Arizona.
Well done.
What? In the background, special thanks to Meg Jett, our communications manager and Coffee Table Talks moderator / producer. She will pop up all of your questions that come up in the scrolly bar over there. Nope, over there. Over there. So don't say anything to embarrass your family because we're all going to see it and it will live on forever in the internet. It'll be great. Be nice. Be kind. It's beautiful. Is it gotten chilly for everybody else out there? Because here in the state of Louisiana, it finally woke up one day and went, oh my gosh, it's autumn. And it got real cold.
Yeah. No. We have two seasons in Tucson, Arizona. One when it's hot and when it's not so hot.
That's fair.
Definitely cooled off here in North Georgia.
North Georgia.
Yeah.
Gotcha. See, that is a really creative way of me going, Brad, where are you calling in from? Did you like it?
Yeah. Far north Atlanta, like way far north Atlanta, almost up towards the mountains.
Very cool. Did you guys have an influx of folks from Florida come in evacuating?
We were actually on a family vacation in Florida at the time. But we were to the west of Hurricane Helene landfall. So we toughed it out there and it was okay. So we kind of missed quite a bit of that. So some folks kind of coming back into Florida as we were going back home.
That's rough. I got quite a few friends. One of my mentors was in the area, checked on them. I try not to be the annoying check on people though, right? Because you have other stuff to worry about other than making me feel better about your life. So if I miss somebody, I'm real sorry. I'm here though. You know how to get a hold of me if you need anything. And for anybody in the Gulf South, if you ever need a couch.
When the dog's not using it.
They're good companions though for the weary. So, come on, it'll be fine. At least you'll have power and a shower.
That's relaxed. That is relaxed back there.
It really is. She is super duper relaxed. So, hey Brad.
Hey Rachel.
What does GRC mean? And what does that mean to you in your current role?
Governance, risk, and compliance. So it is the kind of business-facing risk management side of information security. We don't do as much of the kind of techie things that they do on security operations or threat intel, things like that. But it is more, there's program management. We handle IT audits that occur, kind of oversee controls management to make sure all of our security controls are operating effectively. And so we've got to deal with a lot of people. So on the technical side of information security, mostly dealing with technical things. But over on the GRC side, we're typically dealing with lots and lots of people and trying to keep the program moving along and maturing and kind of watching over stuff.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Is that something that, where did that kind of purview, how did that spin off? You know what I mean? Because that wasn't 10 years ago, right? Governance, risk, and compliance. I always saw it as part of like the CISO and their direct reports kind of role. It didn't seem like there was a named, this is the governance, risk, and compliance person. Am I wrong in thinking that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I moved into security about 10 years ago, so it's kind of been that way since I can remember. Gotcha. But I think a lot of this kind of stuff maybe would have been in some kind of internal audit function before. So you potentially could have found it there. Other companies also have a more dedicated risk management function. So you may have like a chief risk officer or something like that that may have some of those risk and business facing pieces, and the CISO sometimes will have only the technical parts of it too. So there's all kinds of different arrangements that I've seen at different companies based on what their risk profile looks like and how they're wishing to run things.
So
Well, a large part of that, though, is kind of how big the company is, too, right? It's real difficult for small businesses to do,
Oh
to
yeah.
have a whole team to do that.
Oh yeah.
But
And
it's
when I first started doing it, it was just me one-man show. I was doing IT and the security and the program management and everything. So yeah, certainly the company size can affect that.
and it's
Wow.
something that's really evolved over the years, especially since state entities and government entities have gotten involved in NIST developing its standards and those elements. That's
Yeah.
kind of helped grow the whole industry, hasn't it?
For sure. And I mean, I was kind of pleased to see with Rev 3 of NIST 800-171, they finally added in the GRC stuff to that. And that's why I had up to that point had favored ISO 27001 over NIST, because I thought ISO did a better job of capturing what's needed on the GRC side. And NIST tended to be a lot more tech focused, and so I think it's great with Rev 3 that they're taking that into account.
Very cool. So whenever we're talking about risk, for those who don't maybe don't understand what that means to a business, can you kind of break that down a little bit?
Sure.
What kind of risks you're looking at and how you quantify them?
In information security, my style of doing this is that we're not here to be the Department of No, and we're not here to tell the business what vendors they can and cannot use and what technology they can and cannot use. But I see this role as the trusted advisor to the business or to the IT function to measure and analyze the risk of threats we may be facing or controls we may need to implement or vendors and suppliers we want to use, is to measure that risk qualitatively and quantitatively and take that to the business owner or the IT owner and provide them with that information to make a well-informed decision. Is this technology we want to buy, or is there a risk here? Is this a supplier? Oftentimes we're looking at a supplier's information security practices, and are they mature, or are they taking it seriously, or is it a dumpster fire that you maybe should avoid? And so that's what we do, is we kind of measure that risk and help the business folks make a good decision.
So whenever you do give like a score, right, to let's say a third party partnership, mm-hmm. right? If that score is low and you don't want to be the Department of No, wow, I'm a poet, didn't know it. If that score is low and you don't want to be a Department of No, are there extra steps that the company or the business can take to ensure that partnership is more secure from their side, overall reduce the risk of that partnership?
Sure. Sometimes we'll go through our assessment and we'll find 2 or 3 things that we're really not crazy about, and so we'll tell the business stakeholder, hey, we found these 2 or 3 things that we're just really not okay with. Can you work this into your contract that says they're going to agree to fix X, Y, and Z in the next 12 months or whatever? And so we can negotiate that into the contracts and compel a supplier to do those things that we want them to do. But then it's up to my team to follow those and track those to completion to make sure they actually get it done. There's also the factor of risk tolerance, and that varies from one organization to the next. You've got to understand that, and you got to take that into account. And certain businesses, I think, are kind of inherently very risk tolerant, and other organizations are inherently very risk averse. But you've got to factor that into the guidance that you're giving, and where you're planning to spend your time as well, because you don't have enough resources to look at everything. And so you got to consider all those things into the equation, again, to help make those business stakeholders make a well-informed decision.
So I love this because your background, right, is from the techie side,
Right.
pressing buttons. And
Yeah.
I represent a whole bunch of students. So I'm excited because you're now a person who's lived in both worlds
Right.
and can kind of help them to understand what risk means, because some of these folks might be thinking
Yeah.
along the lines of a
Well,
career and that kind of thing. As to those that have the tech background, maybe some examples or
sure.
ideas of what that really is.
I think one of the main things I try and educate folks on that work for me and other people that I brought into this line of work is that we are not here to eliminate risk. That's, I think, a common misperception, is that we are here to manage risk, and we are here to advise our business stakeholders about risk. But in many cases, we will accept risk and we will move on about our day and our business. And tech people sometimes have a very hard time with that. Where it's like, oh, yeah, this dumpster fire over here, just look the other way. We're going to let that dumpster fire burn till it burns out. And tech folks sometimes have a tough time with that. But the fact is, we don't have unlimited resources.
Yeah.
At most companies, the information security function has to fight for headcount and budget, just like every other department, and it's not unlimited. And so I have a bunch of interview questions that I've accumulated over the years that I'll ask people, and one of the ones, this is a freebie if you ever interview with me. One of the things I'll ask people is, what is the overall purpose of the information security function? And probably 7 out of 10 people will tell me, we're here to eliminate risk, or we're here to reduce risk, and that's not what we're really here for. We're here to assess and manage and advise on the risk and make informed decisions on that. And hopefully we reduce risk along the way. But that's not the sole purpose, is just to try and eliminate everything we can, because you're never going to have the resources to eliminate all the risk anyway.
Yeah.
Could you give some examples?
I mean, a lot of the times,
right, from those in the IT students,
yeah,
who've learned what an infrastructure is, what would be an idea of risk?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in these management roles, you get bombarded by every vendor on the planet that wants to sell you the latest trinket and gadget that they've invented, that manages all kinds of other exotic threat vectors that are out there. And I'm not saying these aren't real things, they are, but there's this whole kind of attack surface you've got to manage, and there's all these what if situations, but you have to take into account the likelihood of something bad happening because of each of those. So the tech people frequently look at all these threats and all these problems that are facing their organization, and they'll say, well, we could plug this gap with this new tool, or we could implement these processes for that, and we could go off and buy this, and but all those things require people to run them. I always tell people, look, every tool needs a human to kind of oversee it and make sure it keeps working right. But we can't just run out and hire headcount every time we buy some new tools. So somebody's got to manage that. And then is that piece of technology or that security control you want to turn on, is the business going to tolerate that? Or is it going to reduce their efficiency so badly that they're not going to be able to get their jobs done? Because at the end of the day, the company has to make money. Companies exist to make money. And so if our people out in the business can't do their jobs because our security tools and controls are interfering with that, the company's not going to make money, we're going to get less funding. And so we've got to choose wisely these security controls that we decide to light up or go out and buy or whatever else. It's got to be compatible with the goals of the business, and it's got to not be a detriment to revenue generation, because without that, none of this stuff exists.
Oh yeah. So we've got students, right? Because we have a whole area that is dedicated on hacking. So they go and they set up a system and they're like, okay, how can I completely block this down? Right. And then they start to realize that, wow, the more you do that, the more work is involved.
Yeah. Every
And
trinket you go by equals work to be done.
and then you also get in the situation to where, like, okay, yeah, it's secure, but can people still use it? Right.
Yeah.
And you forget that very important part of IT, that IT is there for the people. The people aren't there for the IT.
Yes, exactly.
And now you're there in that focus in betwixt and between the rest of the organization, right? And all the tech heads, and trying to bring that area of normalcy.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to do that. You can really kill a security team's reputation if you make it hell to work at a place. Nobody's going to like you, and you know, it's not a good way to get things done, in my opinion.
It really isn't. And my husband also works in the information security industry as a principal lead security analyst. And a lot of times it's super fun. People are almost not quite combative, but they're super defensive whenever, like, they're trying to engage with Josh about what tools are appropriate or what security controls, right? And then Josh also is like, well, I have to go and check with all of these other people. And they're like, I don't understand why. Why can't I just use this tool? Why can't you just give me access to it? Like, and I'm not talking about specifically a security tool. I'm talking about just, you know, anything that they're trying to.
Some junk website they want to use, yeah.
And not that Canva's a junk website, but just like, but like, you know, like that, like something that anybody in the office may be wanting to use for whatever purposes, right? And he tries to explain it to them, and it's real hard to do sometimes because they just get so frustrated. They want it now, right? That instant gratification of, no, I want it now. Why do I have to go through all these controls? And it's hard, but there's a good reason, right? It's because, you know, you can't create a spot that's gonna endanger the entire. It's this balancing act between giving people the ability to do their jobs as fast as they want to with the tools that they want to use, but also making sure that they don't inadvertently tear the whole company down because they clicked the wrong link, right? Like, or downloaded the wrong program or plugged into the wrong app, right? Like, it's like, you don't understand. If we screw this up, it's really screwed up. Like, it's so bad.
I think during the kind of before we went live and we were chit-chatting, we talked about my psychology background, and I think it's really important to bring people the why. You know, why, you know, you can't just say, well, we have a policy that says you can't do that, or we have a procedure that says you got to put in a ticket and it's got to get reviewed. I think you need those things, but I think you also need to be able to articulate to somebody the why, and you need to be able to articulate it in a way that they'll be receptive to, and that's going to vary from one human to the next. But I think you have to kind of help them understand. It's like, well, you know, there can be risks with that. If, you know, if this was to happen with that software you want to use, it could let ransomware into our organization, or it could put a virus on your computer, or a keystroke logger that could even get your username and password to your bank account that you log into, or, you know. So I think if you kind of pose it to people in a way they'll be receptive to understand, it's like, I know you're trying to do your job and you think this tool is going to help you do your job, but part of my job is to make sure bad things don't happen. And in order to do that, we need to follow this procedure that we've got in place, and there's a reason it's there.
So how much in your job do you find yourself on a regular basis trying to be that glue in an organization to say, hey, folks, we're all in the same team here. We're all trying to I want to meet all your needs, but here's some of the things that we have to take care of.
I mean, in my current role, I'm not as involved in that technical stuff at the moment. So, but in the past where I have been, I think just raising the awareness generally with, you know, why these policies and procedures exist, you know, building it into your security awareness program, which I'm currently involved in my role, and I'm very passionate about that. But if you can fold in some of those, the why into your messaging that gets put out to the masses, it raises the security savviness of everyone in the organization. And so if you can build that security culture so that they understand how to be a human firewall, but also understand at this company, this is how we do things, and this is why we do it.
Right.
So that there's kind of, you're setting their expectation that, you know, you can't just go install whatever garbage you find on the internet. You know, we have some guardrails in place, and this is why those guardrails are there. So I think doing that and then managing up the chain of command as well has really helped me out in all my roles, because if you can get those leaders buy-in and support, whenever somebody wants to get cranky and escalate something that you're trying to slow them down on, when you've got their support too, they understand why you're doing it. And so when they get that escalation, they'll say, well, you know, Brad told you that because it's really important that we take a closer look at this. Or, you know, if he looked at it and denied it, he's probably got a really good reason for it. And so I can't help you out here. So you kind of have to spread that messaging to, you know, the people on the security team to make sure they're providing that high level of customer service and respectfulness to the people in the business and your stakeholders, so that you're all kind of rallied around that type of way of working. But then, you know, you're giving that why to the people that you're working for, your customers effectively, and you've got the leadership support that'll back you up when you've got to tell somebody no, or when they're not happy that they've got to put a ticket in or follow a process or whatever.
Very cool.
Yeah. Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this kind of falls into that whole sphere of business continuity planning, right? And being able to view the organization as a whole and how to make all those different elements operate together securely, which is a huge deal. And because you're creating the culture too, right? I'm sure that a lot of the policies and stuff that you put into play with risk also involve disaster recovery and creating that culture to prepare for disaster and keep that constant updating of those elements. That becomes a whole area in among itself. And I get fascinated with this because, you know, when you have folks in IT, a lot of folks listening to our podcasts, you know, especially students, trying to figure out, hey, what do I want to get into? This offers a whole different realm of IT apart from the standard sort of people thinking of just twisting knobs.
Yeah, and I talk to people pretty frequently that are, you know, going through their undergraduate program or technical school or whatever, and they're like, I want to get into information security. Okay, cool. Question number one, are you more technical track or are you more business track and risk management? Because I see those as two very distinct things, and the kind of the formal education, the certifications you might want to pursue, the foundational knowledge that you need for each of those are very different. And I've brought a lot of people up that are just not technical people, but they are good business people, and they're good communicators, and they're good risk management folks. And in the risk management side is honestly very teachable, in my opinion. Like all this geeky technical stuff that's in my head, and I'm sure Will and all your, you know, students too, you know, that's really learned over time, and it builds up over time, and you've got to have hands-on keyboard to really know and do that stuff. And it takes years to get really good at it, but I can take like a really good person that's got some business acumen, and I can give them a C-risk book or a CISM book, or I can send them to a couple classes that I know, and then I can just sit there with them and work with them on this risk management stuff and the governance, risk, and compliance. And, they can get really good at that in, 6 to 12 months and be ready to go. So that part of it, I think, is really attractive, is that you don't need to be a geek, and it's very teachable as long as you have the right teacher and the right mentor that can put you on a training program to get those skills built up, and it can come together really quick for the people that are really dedicated to it.
Very cool. Arnez brought up a good comment that relates here. I had that question asked me many times when I began my educational journey. I figured it out halfway through my undergrad. I'm more of a policy guy.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Proud of you, Arnez, for figuring out where you wanted to land. There's a lot of people that are still, it's murky. It's too broad.
Yeah, and we got to have people that can do those things too. I
Right.
mean, I've early in my career, I sat there at my keyboard and hammered out a 65-page comprehensive infosec policy, and we need people that can do those things, and there's more that goes into those than you might think. It can get very political, and so that's a very different skill set than the typical technical person. A lot of times they're not going to be capable of or not have the background to go do the political kind of negotiation that needs to happen with some of those things, and so it's a different side of the same coin.
Yeah, very cool. Now it makes sense to me that customer service is a big part of it. And actually, I was at a local meetup Wednesday evening. And by the way, if anybody noticed Faith Ward's name go by, this is a new mentee of mine. I'm very excited. I got to meet with her for the first time last week. And then she came to, good morning. And then she came to our local BRSec meetup, which is Baton Rouge Security, right? So that's a group of really wonderful folks. The CISO for LSU is a frequent attender. And this time, Will, I almost teared up. He brought 6 members of his 24-member student-run SOC to the meetup. And within those 6 people was the LSU chapter president for WESIS, which is the women's group. If you guys are not familiar, go Google that real quick. It's spelled WECYS. Support your local group any way you can. Anywho, the president chapter was there, and I got to introduce Faith to that person. Now, their student chapter for LSU is specific to LSU, but it's open. All their events are open to everybody to come. You don't have to be just a lady type person. You can be a man type person or a non-binary type person and go to. Their resources are there for everybody. So you guys go connect with Faith. She's right now, what we're working on with her is her ability to network, the human kind of networking, not the plug it in kind of networking, the human kind of networking, and just showing up, man. I'm already proud of her. Like I'm already like, get it, girl, you got it. I met her through a friend that attends ITI, which is a local technical college. And he was like, you really got to meet this young lady. She's awesome and amazing and new in her journey and sort of unsure and doesn't really have a lot of lady type people to look up to. And I was like, oh, me? You want her to look up to me? That's going to be, I don't know, but I'll introduce her to some other folks that I know are way smarter than me. So please go be smarter than me. Go hang out with Faith. Don't let me be leading her all by myself. Okay. It's going to take a village. But anyway, back to the customer service piece that you had mentioned previously. Yeah. That is so important. And it was brought up at the BRSec meetup that we went to, where we had 3 different speakers stand up from our community and talk about their role in cybersecurity or IT. We had like a project manager from Oracle was there. Of course, the LSU CISO stood up and gave his piece. And then we also had somebody that was newer into the industry trying to share just some of their wisdom and maybe tips or tricks. And one of the things that that was said was that if you think you're getting into this career and you don't have to be good at customer service, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You have to be happy and successful in your role, having some bit of customer service skills or soft skills or human skills, whatever, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Those things where you can empathize and use that empathy to navigate a situation, whatever it is, whether it's them going, I want to plug this in and jam it into my stuff, and it might be malicious, but I don't care. I want it now, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, you can't have it now.
Yeah.
Like being able to navigate that conversation with a bit of diplomacy,
Right.
right? For my D&D players out there, you got to roll a real high charisma / diplomacy check, right? To be able to get through that successfully and not create an enemy
Yeah.
out of that person that works at your company, but to be able to create an ally and somebody that can understand, you know, I'm just trying to do my job, and my job is to make sure we don't blow it up.
Yeah.
And
And your failure to be able to do that and be diplomatic can often be a barrier to getting promoted as well. I mean, if you've built a reputation for being a pain in the ass, it's, you know, it can be career limiting if it's bad enough.
it really, really can. It's not okay. How do you feel about the NIST 2.0 and the emphasis on GRC? Pretty sweet, right?
I think
we
that
already
person
mentioned-
answered their own question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is good. I mean, it was a good addition to see in there. Even though, ironically, the CMMC requirement that's about to become written into the Federal Register omits the Rev 3 version, so could be a bit before that makes it into some of those programs.
Yeah, that adoption takes some time, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you keep up with any new trends, and what is an acceptable timeline for you personally in your professional life? I know that's confusing. You're like, oh, here's a new thing from NIST. I want to implement this.
Mm-hmm.
What is an acceptable timeline according to you, and how does that compare to reality?
So I subscribe to all kinds of different news feeds, and like I do the typical Krebs on security. I like him. I like to follow that stuff. A couple people on LinkedIn that I'll follow. You know, different stuff from like SANS Institute, and there's a different OSINT type news feeds and things like that, because I dabble heavily in open source intelligence. And so I just try and skim that stuff in the morning. Kind of when I'm getting ready for my day, I'll try and review some of that. If something piques my interest, I'll go read more about it. But so that's how I try and stay informed. And then also I try and encourage all the people in the security organization, hey, if you come across something that's pretty cool, please drop that into the group chat so that everybody else can see it too. So you kind of just have to go about it from different angles and pick and choose what's valuable and consumable to you, because there's an overabundance of information out there.
I've got one that I want to share with you later. This is a non-sponsored show. Mm-hmm. So when I say this, please don't think I'm just saying this because somebody cuts me a check. It's because I actually do find it valuable in my life. And it's from the CISO series. And it's just the headlines one, not the big David Sparks show where he does like interviews with CISOs and stuff. That's very cool. Defense in Depth is another one that they do that's very cool. But
all of mine are summary based, and then it's got the link to click. I have to go very quick through it.
The CISO series headlines, I like it because I can go about my morning routine while listening to it, and it's usually less than 10 minutes. And it does just the headlines, and it's a daily thing that they do. So you do get a refresh every day with it. But you guys can check that out. They're on all kinds of, live stream and podcasty places. I get mine from YouTube. You can go to the CISO series, but it's CISO series security headlines. That one's absolutely my favorite one, because then I can go squirrely later if I have time for it. just not, you know.
So,
And then the day comes and goes.
so here's a thought for you. So this kind of goes across multiple organizations, right? Governance, risk, and compliance, as you've described, has a huge place in an organization, in a business, and that it's a lot more on the business-oriented side. And then you have the gearhead tech side.
Mm-hmm.
And if either one of those groups is having difficulties in those lines, that can be a very big difference between what has all the boxes checked and what is actually secure,
Yeah.
right? And so from my perspective, that takes a real good mesh between the two to be really healthy.
Sure does. Yeah.
How do you, in your thoughts across the industry, because I'm sure you've seen places that are doing it well and places aren't doing it quite as well.
Sure.
How do you foster that environment, and how do you make that grow to be the best that it can be?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Team of Teams and another book called Extreme Ownership, and both those are written by military veterans. Both of those really encourage a raised level of organizational awareness. And so I think just getting these people in the same room on a regular basis, once a week for half an hour, not the whole function, but at least the leadership of those, and just kind of making sure that, the things they're working on, the other side has visibility to, and vice versa, but also talking about things that are gaps in the program, gaps in the controls that are running, issues that one side or the other is finding. Because on the compliance side, we'll find that, hey, there's an EDR control, and we've noticed that it ain't running on a couple of Linux machines that we spot checked. And so what's going on with that? And so I think if you can get it to where you're like, we're each here to watch one another's backs, because they come across stuff too that the GRC team needs to know about.
Right.
So if you can kind of make it to where, hey, we're here to work together on the same thing, and which is, again, to manage risk. It really fosters a collaborativeness between them, that you're here to work together. But sometimes they can be seen as adversarial, because the tech folks will think the GRC folks are just there poking holes, and let me see what I can find that they've not done right or isn't working right. So I think that's a big part of it. I've also had some success where I had a leader for security operations and a leader for the GRC function, and I wanted the GRC guy to get more tech savvy, and I wanted the tech savvy guy to get more GRC savvy. And so I did a job rotation for those two people for a quarter. And so I made them lead the other person's team for 3 months. And if you do this for a month, that's not enough time,
No.
but 3 months is enough where you're going to really get fully immersed into that side of the business. And that worked out very well for the team members that reported to those folks. They got to see a different leadership style, and got exposed to different things. And so it was good for the team. It was also good for the company, because now we have some continuity in case somebody were to leave the company for some reason or move to a different role. And those people grew professionally as well, because now they can put on their resume, well, yeah, I can do GRC as well. And in fact, I ran the GRC function for a period of time too. So that was a win for everybody when we did that.
And they probably had to have a whole lot of communication between the two of them.
Oh, yeah, no, they met
across this. What
constantly.
the heck do you do with?
Yeah, required constant communication between those two individuals. And one of them was not really nuts about the idea, but where they told me they were trying to get to in their career, I was like, we need to boost your skills in this space. And so it was, but I think they got a lot out of it at the end of the flip there.
I think that's brilliant, because I think if they didn't have it before, they probably also realized how much they have to depend upon their team members
Yeah.
To support them in their position, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it certainly gives them the perspective of understanding like why they might be asked to do something or why, something is coming up. I mean, that's a huge part when they go back to their regular job. They've got that additional perspective to understand what's going on the other side of the house.
Rob has an interesting question there.
Oh, I was looking everywhere else. All right, Rob. Either of the leaders decide probably ask not to go back to original role. Okay.
They were both very happy to return to their original roles because one of them was just not super technical and was really good at the GRC side, and the other one was like mega technical. And honestly, if they would have said, "Can I stay?" I would have said no, because you're just so much better at this other thing. It was to make them more well-rounded individuals and professionals. That was the goal, and so we put them back at the end of it. But if they wanted to and they both agreed to that, then I don't have any problem with that.
What a great way to like almost instantaneously build empathy between two professionals and their different roles. Like just walk a mile in your shoes, literally.
But I think if you have somebody that is the GRC person and they excel there, but they're a little weak on the technical side, but they tell you their job aspiration is to be a CISO one day. Like, I believe you got to have some of those chops, because if you're going to lead through an incident and a mega crisis, you've got to have some of that technical acumen to be able to lead the technical people and also to be able to translate all that technical stuff up to the board level and all your other stakeholders and whatnot. So, if you want to be I know this is hugely, there's all kinds of debate out there and people get very passionate about it. I do believe that CISOs need to have some degree of technical acumen. They don't need to be an expert, but I think you do need to have some of that, because for me, it gives me a lot of credibility with the technical people when I can speak their language and when I can call out their BS. And you've got to have some of that to sit in that role, in my opinion.
I would agree. I mean, so as regular viewers know, there's a lot with higher ed that I find lacking and that we're trying to change. But part of that, if you go through classes where you just learn Windows, Linux, networking, but you never get the classes that, okay, here, do a Linux front end that has to talk to a Microsoft database backend over a network, right? Yeah. When you do that stuff, you pick up a whole lot conceptually that just doesn't come out of the standard type of class. And where if you are in the midst of the tech at all, like you're saying there, you pick up the concepts, not just the understanding of the concepts, but the flavor of the concepts.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
Some of my favorite CISOs that I've ever worked for or with are the ones that are just, call them the unicorns. They got the perfect balance of both. I mean, and who doesn't want to work with that one? Like, that's the favorite. But I find that I'm most useful whenever they're lacking in when they're more technical, and I can help make up for the lack of human skills or kind of that communication piece. So
yeah,
I don't know. There's all types out there, man.
Yeah.
But I think it is important for them to identify their own gaps and work on that.
It really helps to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah.
When it comes down to brass tacks, right?
You just had so many colloquialisms right there. It's like, there's a lot. Oh, man. Princess, what are you doing, my child? Would you go that way? Sorry.
So, out of curiosity, how many, it's one thing with the bosses. How much do you have in your company with folks wanting to aspire to go to the different departments?
I don't see a lot of it where I'm at right now. It is a very large information security function that has a lot of specialization. In other programs I've run, it's been a little bit smaller. And so you've got people that become more generalists. And I feel like generalists tend to want to move around a little bit more. I don't really see a lot of it within the information security function, but I do see it more frequently with people that are in the IT function that want to come over to information security. And I have been successful in many cases on taking people like that. And I'm very good at spotting that kind of talent that I think will excel in information security, both GRC and tech side.
Well, you came more
I
from
see
the
that a
tech
lot more.
side, so that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. Do you feel like your experience there coming more from that? It was you were more SOC management, correct?
No, I've done all of it. So I kind of went from a one-man IT show at a consulting firm. So I've done pretty much every IT job that exists to a certain degree. Then I decided to do security full-time, but my first full-time security job was starting a brand new information security function at a $3.5 billion company. So I was building GRC and SecOps at the same time. So I'm
Wow.
very comfortable in both sides, but I have the technical foundation to do that. I was also a hacker as a teenager. And so what I'll tell some of these IT folks is that you've spent many years learning how to build computers and systems. And so as an attacker, though, we like to take them apart and break them. And so they understand how they're built, which gives them a good perspective to understand how an adversary could come in and try and do harm to those platforms. So that's done well, and I've taken those kinds of people as well, and I've plugged them into GRC side too. I just recently took a SecOps guy and I put him into a IT audit role. I saw a comment about that a minute ago come in, and I've taken help desk people and put them in charge of my security awareness program because they were great at dealing with non-tech savvy people on a routine basis. And so it's just spotting that, what they're good at, what they enjoy, and translating that into these different types of roles that we need on the security side.
Very cool.
And I've had some cases quite a few where it worked out well, a couple where it did not work out so well.
Oh man, what do you think? Was there a common challenge across the folks that didn't work out so well? Like something you can identify as like, well, you didn't do that so great.
I mean, one of it was just, they knew the company well and they knew technology pretty well, but they didn't really follow the training program that I had put together. And so because like I can teach you this stuff and you can learn it from other people on the team, but I'm pretty formal with people when I tell them you're going to do security plus certification in the first 3 months, and then you're going to do C-Risk or CISA certification in 12 months or whatever. And when I can, I'll put it into their job offers if HR will let me, because I believe that they've got to get that formal education done in order to make that translation and to become more effective. And so where I've seen this not work is they didn't really follow that training program, and it was evident in their work too. It was just it became too much of a barrier to their success in the role.
Gotcha. So the ones that were successful, they did follow that training program and took all that mentorship.
Yeah, the really good ones did so ahead of schedule too.
Oh wow. Well, impressive. Good job. So so as we were talking about in the pre-show, and I've said 1,000 times on this stream before, I am a neurospicy individual, which means that standardized testing can be a challenge. So let's say that I am a tech person on your team, Brad, that wants to move into GRC, and you've given me a path of training. What would be the best way for me to come to you and say, hey, because that means on the ADHD superpowers that I cope with, I may get some things done super early, but there may be things I struggle with really hard. What would be the best way for me to approach you and say, hey, I need an extension on this, or I need
Yeah.
help, or are there additional resources I might be able to find that will help me study for this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the same boat there, so I get that. And when I did CISM certification and getting prepared for that exam, it was brutal. And even through graduate school, for me, that was very, very challenging. But I tend to give people the kind of runway I would like to have, which is not what the phrase today is neurotypical. And so a lot of times people will react and they'll be like, oh, I mean, that's more than enough time. So I tend to be very realistic and generous. I respect that they've got to do their 40-hour work week as well. They've got family and kids at home they got to take care of and everything else. And so I tend to be pretty relaxed with that. And I'll propose to them, say, well, I'd like for you to do this in 3 months and this in 12 months. Is this achievable? And it is a lot of work. And if they agree to it, we we put it into their goals for the year, and I expect them to hold to it, and they need to update me. I got a lot of people I got to take care of. I'm not going to go to each one of them every single
Right.
week. Are you doing okay? And they got to come to me and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. What can we do? Or sometimes the situation in the business will change. Like, let's say they're on a 2-person team and somebody takes a leave of absence for 3 months, and now all the workload's on that one person.
Right.
But that's when their certification exam was going to happen. I'll be like, hey, let's move that out a little bit. So I try and be, treat people like humans, but they got to come to me and tell me what's going on. But
Right.
give people a lot of runway up front to get it done. But at the end of the day, they got to be adults and get it done. And so people that work for me will probably tell you that I'm fair and I'm supportive. That does not mean I am easy. I do still hold people accountable. I do push people outside of their comfort zone to elicit a level of performance and growth that I think they're capable of. So, the targets that I set tend to be aggressive, but still realistic. Because if you give people too much runway, it'll just never get done.
True. True. And as a neurodivergent human being, I can tell you right now, I hate and need structure in my life. Like, I know it's a balancing act. 100%.
Sometimes I'm better with a shorter runway because it sets a level of urgency that's like, all right, I gotta get that focus and get this thing done.
Yep. I feel that hardcore. Sometimes I on purpose procrastinate because I know, not for everything, but for a lot of things I will, so that I actually have forced myself to have a shorter timeline to get something accomplished. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just a thing. It's a thing I do.
I get it.
It's terrible.
Totally get it.
Yeah. So whenever you build these things into the hiring process around certification or continued education of any sort, is that something that your company currently now will reimburse them, right? Because to take the exam or to take training, right? It's costly. It can be very costly.
Sure. Yeah, we account for that.
That's awesome.
We do that. And
I knew that before I asked you that question, just so you know.
Past 4 companies I've been at. I mean, but I also budget for this too. Right. So different leaders may or may not budget as well for it as others, but I'm very intentional with when I'm going through budget season once a year. It's one of the things that I make sure that line item is always there, and we'll be able to support it for people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
At the end, I mean, like, our budgets tend to be kind of big anyway, and so this little training piece is just it's a drop in the bucket, but I think it means a lot to the people that you're supporting, that you're investing in their growth.
It really does.
So I think it's a no-brainer to spend the money.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of companies out there that don't offer that. And that's one reason why Will and I in the Coffee Table Talks have partnered with ISC2 to run a scholarship program through their nonprofit arm called the Center for Security Awareness and Education. If anybody listening today would like to contribute to that fund, you can click that damn QR code, and it'll take you to the site where you can contribute. And that's our campaign. We just opened that up a few weeks ago, so it's new, but definitely go check it out. And there's other ways out there that you can help, but this is the way I decided to do it.
Yeah.
It's a scholarship program that affords continued education cost as well as certification costs will be covered 100% by ISC2.
Cool.
So that's a good one to go to because not everybody's as cool as Brad.
Yeah. So just one last thought on that. What would you what would you like to see coming out of higher ed? Because if you're providing,
I think it's a part of it is the technical stuff which you're doing, and I think we need to focus more on tech school, like 1 year, 2 year programs, to get people ramped up on the technical side quicker. I think there's a big opportunity there, and you don't need a 4-year degree for that stuff. You also don't really need a 4-year degree for the GRC side either. So I think, just making these programs more realistic, like you're doing with, all the lab kind of stuff, and making it more like what you're going to do in the real world, I think is beneficial. And bringing in people like me to kind of review the curriculum and review the lessons that are going on, and even to be able to give people examples of the challenges that we're facing out in the business world. Because a lot of times people come to me and I can just tell that they're like a theorist. They don't have any hands-on experience. They don't know how all the plumbing and wiring works, and even on the risk management side, it's just all like hypothesis and theory. And it's like, well, that doesn't really translate to, they told you in school we're here to eliminate all the risk. Guess what? That's not accurate. And what we're actually here to do is to observe and monitor dumpster fires sometimes. And so, those are the things that I wish the curriculum would take into account. And I've offered to provide those types of, advisement and feedback to different security programs. Say, hey, this class you're teaching is totally worthless. Like, that doesn't do anything for me. But what you should be teaching is, how to manage an EDR platform, or how to manage a project effectively, or just some of the things that we need them to be successful at. Because a lot of times it just doesn't match up very well.
Awesome.
So everybody, I encourage everybody to please go connect with Brad. Meg will probably pop up that LinkedIn QR code here in a second. Go connect with Brad on LinkedIn. Didn't I tell you? Wonderful human.
Appreciate
Wonderful. It. Good.
Just a regular guy.
Just a regular guy. See, that makes it better. Is the humility in it? Is just you're such a great professional, wonderful leader, and I'm so excited to have had you here with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, all the praise and all the accolades go to my team. I'm nothing without my teams, and
oh my God, stop being awesome.
all my success couldn't have occurred if it weren't for all those people. So, big thanks to all of them if they're listening in. Well,
thank you, Brad's team. You guys rock. We love you too.
Well done.
Go check that out. Next week, we will be here again with my good friend, Sam Fucht. He does his own Python Basics YouTube channel. Very cool, teaching the greater populace for free how to navigate Python. So we're going to have him here with us. I'm also doing... That's my alarm for lunch. If you're not ADHD and you don't have 20 alarms set, are you doing ADHD right? And next week, I'm going to have a little sit down with my friend Evan Franson for his live podcast one evening. It's at like 9 p.m. Central or something. I'll share the links later this week through my LinkedIn. And the event with Sam will be live this afternoon for you to join and click and share with all your friends and do all those things. So you guys have be good to each other. Will, do you have final thoughts?
Dude, I really appreciate the feedback, and because that helps students across the board have an idea of where they want to go into IT, and that there's so much more besides just the technical side of it. And also, probably reaching out to you on input on curriculum because, well, hey, we're going to have an advisory team meeting today, but, but that is something that higher ed needs to do across this country is meet up with the workforce and find out what they need.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're producing students to get jobs. So find out what they need to get those jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Rachel and Will. Appreciate you having me on the show. It's been fun.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next week. And Brad, you have a good weekend. And everybody out there have a great weekend too.
See ya.
Wait, this is the part where we wave and we're friendly and we say bye.